I've been getting several questions recently about how to go about using your thumb in the left hand in order to grab certain chord shapes and to just be able to accomplish certain things on the fingerboard of the guitar. So I wanted to make a video about that, and I'll discuss and show you some of the mechanical things that are happening in order to keep the hand nice and relaxed, and also some things that are happening within the forearm and just things that you do want to bear in mind physically in order to avoid any discomfort with that, as well as talking a bit about why might you want to do this at all in the first place, because certainly there's a lot of guitar players who just don't ever use their thumb in their left hand. But if you can add that into your toolkit, it comes in handy. It opens up a whole world of new possibilities. And when I was a kid, I never really thought that there might be any reason to not use your thumb in the left hand, because my two guys were Chet Atkins and Hendrix. Very different kinds of players, but they both used their thumb quite a bit. And certainly Chet in a lot of his great classic solo arrangements, and Hendrix particularly in his rhythm guitar playing, which was beautiful, perfect even, I might say. So we'll be getting into some of the specifics right now and taking it from there. as that shows a bit, there's a lot of things that you can do with the left-hand thumb that make for chord voicings as well as bass patterns and melodic patterns where it's really the only way to get it on the fingerboard. And there's some other times where it's a little more ambiguous. You could either use the thumb or you could use a bar. But there's quite a few times where the thumb really opens up such a possibility that you just would not have enough fingers to sound a particular chord or play a particular passage without having all these five guys working together. So that's the number one reason to get your thumb developed and to have that in your toolkit. I was reflecting a bit on my inspirations and thinking in particular those two guys that I was just talking about. And as much as it seems like it all comes from such a different world, you know, what does Chet Atkins have to do with Hendrix and vice versa? But really what I realized was both those guys, as well as plenty of the other players who heavily used their thumbs, they were either playing solo guitar or they were playing in context more often than not without another rhythm guitar player. Hendrix, power trio. Mitch, Noel, Jimmy. Later on, Buddy Miles and Billy Cox. No rhythm guitar player. They did have a rhythm guitar player at Woodstock. Larry Lee came in. But generally, Jimmy was playing rhythm and lead basically at the same time. You know, usually, you know, doing these very intricate things underneath his vocal. Chet, of course, Mr. Guitar, playing a lot of pure solo arrangements, as well as then doing thumb-picking sections and playing with the band, taking his solos, but setting it up with these brilliant thumb-picking arrangements. And same could be said, Merle Travis. Same could be said, Stevie Ray. Again, these are all guys that really were operating more or less without the use of a rhythm guitar player when they were doing a lot of this stuff. So in order to get this started, first thing is it goes back to where your forearm is positioned, where your hand, how it's wrapped around the neck of the guitar, and so much, again, like I was talking about with string bending and vibrato, so much of it goes back to what's going on behind the neck of the guitar. So now we're going to take an in-depth look at that. The most important thing in all of this, and what will actually help you and transcend even whether you're going to use your left-hand thumb for a particular chord voicing or not, this gets back fundamentally to how do you situate your hands to do what you really need to do on the guitar in any given moment, because that changes. Oftentimes, if you're playing an intricate arrangement, sometimes it might change by the bar, by the measure. So I notice this a lot of times, even teaching folks that are just literally beginning and just starting out. A lot of times difficulty playing basic open chords boils down to where is your forearm, how is your thumb, where is it on the neck, and how is that affecting your wrist, as well as also your shoulder, and all of this working together. If you approach it like the forearm has to be completely straight and it has to be in line with the wrist, I mean, look at that. That's not gonna... That puts your hand in ultimately a very awkward position, and it's not comfortable physically, and it doesn't make for any kind of flexibility or dexterity really in the fingers themselves, in your four primary fingers that are supposed to be switching between basic chords, so on and so forth. So first thing is, most of the time, as I mentioned in the bending and the vibrato videos, most of the time, behind the neck of the guitar, my wrist, number one, it's never straight. It's almost always got a little bit of an angle. Now, there would be a difference if I were playing a bar chord, because my forearm will drop. There would be a slight bend in my wrist, so you can see how that is. My shoulder is dropped a little bit, but it's still, the forearm itself is at about a 45-degree angle coming out from the side of my chest. So that's the first thing. Avoid an awkward movement like that. It's not going to help you at all. It's not going to do any good or be of any benefit. So, having your hand in a position that lines up with having a relaxed left hand set of fingers. So, in addition to this, you want to really just stop sometimes before you even get into a particular voicing or a particular chord, or even, again, for absolute beginners, before you even get into basic open chords. Take your hands off of the guitar and just put your hand back on the neck. Don't worry about fretting anything. And tell me, where does it feel comfortable to hold the guitar? I mean, I don't mean like whether it's on your right leg or your left leg. Most of the time I do it the wrong way according to classical technique. I do hold the guitar on my right leg almost always, unless I'm, have a guitar strap on. But as far as your hand, is it, and there will be several spots where it's comfortable, by the way. But if your thumb is in the middle of the neck, that's pretty comfortable to me. But I can make it uncomfortable if I just experiment with where my wrist and arm and the angles. I can raise that. I can see that wouldn't be any friend to playing the guitar. So just put your hand on the neck, see where you feel comfortable. You'll probably find, as I have, that you want about this 45-degree angle. Now, as you move higher up the fingerboard, your forearm, it's going to straighten out, and then it might actually go in a clockwise angle, I don't know, maybe about 15 degrees the other way. You can see that if I just do that, you can actually see my forearm changing position with all of that. But that's the first thing, is where is this guy? So now that I know where that feels natural for me, and I found, in one-on-one instruction, this tends to be the case with many other students. Where is your thumb? Okay? And if you're playing any kind of bar chord, your thumb pretty much has to be either right around the center of the guitar neck, and by the center I mean, you can see right there, the stripe is the center on the neck. So either there, or even, you might even drop it lower, because your arm is going to drop, your shoulder's going to drop a bit, and in order to get a nice clean bar chord, if you could see the front of the guitar, I'm playing an F bar shape right there. So that's true for getting a bar chord, but what happens when you need your thumb? So if I, again, take my fingers completely off the guitar, and I then just get it nice and comfortable. Let's just arbitrarily, I'll keep them in this part of the neck because that's where I've been showing you. Now wrap your thumb around the neck and see if I were to extend my thumb so it's resting on just alongside the lowest string, the 6th string. And there I am. What's changed is that my forearm has come up a bit. There's even been a bit of a rotation in my wrist, because if that is one position, it's moved clockwise just a little bit. If we were to define this, if there were a clock here, and we could call like noon, 3, 6, 9, my wrist has now just gone from 9 o'clock as my thumb wraps around to about 10 o'clock. See how that worked? And it's all connected to the thumb. It's just this rotation of the wrist. If I try to get that thumb around the neck and this arm in this wrist completely still kind of straight without rotating, I'll tell you what's going to happen. First of all, you're not going to be able to do that with your forearm at this angled, comfortable position. First thing that's going to happen is your arm's going to move out. You're going to be attempting to do that, and you're going to be, all of a sudden, all of this, I feel a lot of tension and strain in there, and it's not a healthy way to play the guitar. either for the short term or the long term. So as long as this is right where it feels comfortable, your thumb is connected to your wrist, and that's just going to rotate a bit. So there, I'm at about 10 o'clock. And now what happens with that is, show you the front. All I have to do is really bar the first two strings, the high E and the B string. So I got 2 strings to bar instead of 6. Now that's okay. I think it's worth practicing both approaches. I think there's a lot of times where it absolutely is necessary to just do a regular bar chord. Chet played some things in particular that they're just very difficult. They're very demanding, and he was a total virtuoso. He was a complete genius. Technically he was leagues ahead of Hendrix. I mean, I love them both dearly, just about the same. So it's difficult for me to kind of say those things, particularly on video. But Chet, he was the man. But like in the Petite Waltz, you have to play a very difficult particular part by barring at the 7th fret and then doing all the work with your remaining 3 fingers here. And then again, my thumb's dropped, as I said. My forearm has dropped accordingly. But there's a lot of times where you don't have to do that. And so if you can get away with only doing a partial bar, a lot of times I find it's more relaxed for my hands, partly because I've been playing this way for so long. Also, particularly with the Hendrix thing. Something about volume and distortion and the way that stacked fifths sound, particularly like on those, the first chord of Axis, Bold as Love. I think it sounds different tonally to use your thumb and to use a partial bar. It's a different actual sound of the guitar than doing a straight bar. And so there's a lot of good reasons to develop your thumb, as I said earlier. So with that in mind, how much of your thumb can you wrap around the neck? And some of that will be determined, but just by the way your particular hands are. And everybody's hands are going to be different. I realize that I'm fortunate to have a bit of a longer thumb. And that comes in handy. Sometimes like those guys like Chet early on, like the radio, special years, like where he was playing a lot with the Carters, around like 1950, like before he went to the Gretsch even. Sometimes he was wrapping his thumb around not just the low E string, but the low E and the A string. And I suspect that Jimmy was doing the same kind of moves. I think when I got into using my thumb a lot as a kid, I remember just reading through these guitar player magazines. In fact, I remember the particular issue with Hendrix on the cover, this whole issue devoted to Jimmy, and I would just see these photographs after photograph of Hendrix with his thumb wrapped around his Stratocaster. And then, of course, when I saw the footage of him at the Monterey Pop Festival, and his thumb is everywhere. So just it was natural. It was like I was in the middle of having formal instruction, but in addition to all this, my heroes and the guys that I was seeing pictures of and videos of, they were just using their thumb. So I thought, well, that's the way you have to play the guitar. And it was only later that I paid attention to this stuff to try to refine it a bit more so I could do more delicate kind of things when necessary. So that's a bit about what's going on here, and that will certainly help a lot in just getting your hands into the right position. And now I want to show you a bit more about what's going on as you move higher up the neck, and we'll take a look at the fingerboard from the front. Now, if we were to take chords and the left-hand thumb completely out of the discussion here, and I only do this temporarily, but because it is all so interconnected, this gets down to an even more fundamental point about how your hands are situated on the neck of the guitar. If we were just focused on single notes, you will find, and this is so important if you are just starting out learning how to play, it's awesome if you can get to this early on. I didn't. I was like most of us, where it started out, not thinking about these things, and then later on, you realize that there's some subtle things and some delicacies that you can fine-tune and work on. And people have asked about touch and tone and all these kind of elusive things. This gets right at the heart of it. No matter what kind of style you're playing, there is a point on the fingerboard with each of your fingers where your contact with the string and the fingerboard, and even where you are positioned within the fret, it all blooms. And I don't mean for this to overwhelm anyone or to be too much, but you don't have to sit there and obsess over if you're sharp or flat based on which side of the where you are exactly in the fret. You can do that, and I'm a little I don't know if I should say I'm embarrassed to admit I've done that. I have been that obsessive with the instrument, sitting there with the tuner trying to go, okay, where is the perfect spot to train my hands. At the end of the day, that's going a little overboard. But what's not going overboard is to find where that contact point is with each finger and with the string, so a note just really blooms. And like if you're playing single notes, like even like for me, that's playing a lot of kind of blues runs, but I flubbed one note, but the point is, you'll notice if you look at my fingers and how they're angled, my fingertips are almost never straight. And again, what's that related to? It's related to everything that's going on behind the neck of the guitar. And that changes even the tone of how you're contacting the string. And so much of this is so subtle, but when my hands are in their natural position, the point of contact with the string, like with the index finger, it's not even really, it is on the tip of the finger, but it's, if you could see, I'll try this right now. I don't know if this will come through on the camera. I'm going to try to make an indentation with the string. You can see, I don't know if you can see that, but just barely, that indentation, it's not a straight line. It's, the contact point of where my fingertip is hitting the string, it's angled too. And that's all related to everything I've been talking about right here. And there's a slight change in pitch when I rearrange my hand, but more than that, I'm trying to make that completely straight, and it's not really right now. I mean, but that's, for demonstrating how I would not play the guitar. Okay? And I look at that, and if nobody has told me before, especially like if I'm just starting out, again, I've noticed this with people who really are just beginning and need some guidance. And, I want everybody to enjoy the guitar. I don't want anyone to ever stop playing the guitar, because it's the greatest thing, It's been like this companion endlessly. And that, aside from sounding stilted, and I'm playing slowly because it's not natural, but I'll give you an A-B right there. If I try to do this and keep everything like I think I'm supposed to, contact the string right there, and now let me put my hand in a natural position. What has more tone? And to my ears, it's very obvious. I mean, it's one approach deadens things, and the other lets all sorts of beautiful overtones and things resonate and sing, and that's what you want with the guitar. As I've said over and over again in many other videos, the guitar if you think of it as though it's either an extension of your voice if you are a singer, or if you're not a singer, it becomes your voice. And if you think of the guitar like that, no matter what style you play, you'll be in great shape. So, yeah, my hands, they're just never completely straight. You know, they got a little bit of the angle based on that, like when I was doing a partial bar chord there with my thumb wrapped around. Look at that. It's, you know, the second string, it's like right behind the fret. The first string, it's kind of right in the middle of the fret. And as I move up the fingerboard, like if I were just practicing, here's another thing you could practice. If you were to practice trying to keep that bar completely vertically straight up and down, try doing that, and you're going to feel that it's not natural. You wouldn't play the guitar like that. But if you're starting from this, see what happened? The bar straightened out as my wrist rotated and as my forearm came in behind the neck. So it's all related. What's going on up here is connected to what's going on back here. And you may have noticed, I think I did a string bend some time ago, and you saw that what happened there was when I bent the string, my thumb came up. And that's because you need some support when you're bending a string. You don't want to try to bend a string with your thumb all the way back here, and it's a little bit out of tune even. I didn't get it exactly to pitch. You need the support of bringing your thumb up. That means your wrist is rotated a little bit, and everything we just talked about holds true. Now, when your thumb is comfortably around the bass side of the guitar, around the sixth string, you're not going to play that, but it's just there. That's your anchor. So anyhow, that stuff is all covered in the bending and the vibrato videos. So I know those are different concepts, but that's a bit about the uses for the thumb. And even there, you know, as I just mentioned, it's not even limited to playing chords. It's certainly very, very helpful when you do need to play chord shapes, like I showed you, like on Ain't Misbehavin'. You know, Chet couldn't have done that move. If you try to do that, I mean, that's a bad example, actually, now come to think of it, because you can do that barred. But let's see, certain things. Okay, here you go, like in Nagasaki. I'm sorry, it was Little Rock Getaway. Sometimes I get the titles of tunes that are in G mixed up in my brain. Where it's actually, I think, the same shape in Nagasaki. That's what I was thinking. Well, anyhow, yeah, it is Little Rock Getaway. To get that open E string sounding, try to bar that and have that happen. Not going to happen. So this becomes the only way of getting the open E string ringing. Your remaining pitches fretted, your G, B, and D notes, and your nice bass. So, yeah, you know, and like I said, even on the radio sessions, there's some stuff he does on his arrangement of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, which is absolutely brilliant. Go check it out and listen to it if you haven't already heard it. But that's a bit, you know, more than what I want to cover today and talk about. Main thing is getting your hand and your arm and your wrist in a nice, comfortable position, and having this just right there when you need it. And most of the time, my thumb hovers around there when I'm playing the guitar. Usually, certainly, if I'm not in a room full of classical guitar players, my thumb is hanging out there and living there most of the time when I'm just playing single notes, phrasing. I just like to grip the neck. So, yeah, if you got any questions, anything that I've mentioned here that doesn't make complete sense, I'm happy to help. Just email me, leave a comment. Certainly tune in next time. We'll continue talking about all things guitar, and hope this finds you well. And I'll see you the next time.